Hey everybody, it's Ryan. Let me start this video off by first saying that safety is everything. Safety is very important, and that you should never, ever get near a running PTO or power takeoff on any equipment. So I've been receiving a lot of questions about the power takeoffs or the PTOs on especially our Rhino mower. So I wanted to address some of those concerns in a video, and I'm going to start off with the question, why don't we have shaft guards on our PTOs? Because this was on a video of running the Rhino mower and people were asking me, why don't we have shaft guards on? Well, we do have shaft guards on. The Rhino mower has 3 PTO shafts on it. They all have shaft guards on them. And what the shaft guards do is that they keep the shaft and you separate. So what the shaft guards are designed to do are spin separately from the shaft itself. So let's say I'm doing some work, let's say I'm running a chopper box and I have to get out, like our old John Deere chopper box, and I have to get out and turn on the chopper box with the handle that's in the front of the box. Well, let's say I'm walking up behind it and I trip and I fall into the PTO shaft. Well, the thing that's going to save me there is the PTO shaft guard. And it's very important that all your equipment has shaft guards on them. In a case where you do happen to get a little too close to the PTO shaft guard, it keeps you separate. There's been way too many cases where a person just brushes up against it and it catches their clothing and it sucks them in. If you want to see a video showing what happens when you get a little too close, there are plenty of demonstrations on YouTube showing what happens when you get entangled in a PTO shaft. So another point I want to make is why we don't have chains that are connected from the PTO shaft guard to the tractor or elsewhere. So people are asking why the shaft guards are spinning. Let me start off first by saying why you would want chains on your PTO shaft guards. So say I was running a chopper box and I had to get out to operate it like our old John Deere chopper box. Now, I'm doing a lot of work behind the tractor and the PTO has to be running, and you're trying to throw silage up into the harvester and you have to get back there. So the reason that you may want chains connected from the PTO shaft to the tractor and keep that shaft guard from turning is, like I said, if you're doing a lot of work behind the tractor and you don't want it to be turning. However, some of the drawbacks of having those chains on there are that it increases the bearing wear between the shaft guard itself and the shaft. So there's 2 bearings on each side. Actually, there's 1 bearing on each side. There's 2 bearings per shaft. There's one right here, and there's one back here. They actually have grease zerks right there that you can use to put a little grease in there and keep them nice and pristine. There are a lot of drawbacks. I've heard some people say that by greasing them regularly, it actually causes there to be more friction in here, and the dirt collects to it, and then over time, after enough use, it just rips the shaft guard all to shreds. And that's kind of one of the drawbacks of having the chains on there, because if you're using the chains, you want to make sure that those bearings have grease and that there's enough lubrication in there, because you want to extend the life of those bearings. I've done a lot of research on the PTO shaft guard topic and whether or not they should have chains, and I looked into as many accidents as I could find. And I'm not saying that this is perfectly flawless. I'm sure someone out there was going to have more time than I do and find a situation where there was a shaft guard in place. However, most of the accidents that I saw involving PTO shafts involve shafts that aren't covered and they aren't guarded. Some had the PTO shafts removed, others were broken and busted, and I stopped and asked myself, you know, why would they be busted and why would they be broken up? And there's a lot of reasons for it, but having those chains on there will increase the bearing wear and make, sorry, people are harvesting and catching my attention. By having those chains on there, you're actually making more maintenance on the machine. And I'm not saying that, you know, this isn't like perfect for every situation kind of deal. Like if you are running behind a chopper box and you are around the PTO a lot, I say good, get those chains on there and keep it from spinning. Keep a close eye on it. But a lot of the statistics that are out there involving injuries on farms involving PTOs are actually younger generations and less experienced people who aren't totally familiar with things on the farm. So if you're a farmer out there and you use chains, great. If you keep them in good condition, great. However, we don't do a lot of work around the PTOs while they're running, so we don't really see it fit that we should have to maintain those bearings and everything, when if you just let the shaft guard rotate on the PTO shaft, then you have significantly less wear on the PTO shaft. And again, I'm not saying that if you keep those chains on there, you're going to have a problem. I've heard people who say that, oh, I put thousands of hours on my machine, I've never greased the bearings, and the shafts are the shaft guards are perfectly fine. Okay, well, look out at all those farms out there who have missing and broken shaft guards. There's not a perfect formula for everything. A lot of people will take shortcuts. Not saying we will, and I'm not saying you will, but I'm saying that people out there do. And that's kind of one of the concerns that I have on using chains, because if you're using those chains, you're going to cause increased wear. And yes, PTO shaft guards may be 50 to 150 bucks, but there are a lot of farmers out there who just won't get around to doing it. Because let's be realistic. Let's say you're running that chopper box and then your shaft guard gets blown away, because I've heard a lot of situations about the chains that are connected to the shaft guards coming off and basically becoming projectiles, and just ripping the shaft to shreds and shaft guard to shreds and having to go replace them. So what are you going to do if you're on a time crunch, rain's coming, and you don't have a lot of time to fix it? Are you going to take the time out of your day to go pick up a new shaft guard, or are you going to pull that sucker off and keep going? Well, I don't think I have to say what a farmer typically will do. I'm not saying that is what a farmer should do. I'm a realist, so I see things for how they are, and not how I would like them to be. So I think that by not having those chains on there, a lot of people would just leave the shaft guards alone. By having those chains on there, causing increased wear, and over time they can just wear away, and a lot of farmers just won't replace them. And I did a lot of research into the PTO accidents, and every single one I found had the PTO shaft guard missing. There wasn't any situation saying that they got caught on the PTO shaft guard. There were situations where they got caught on the PTO shaft itself or on the knuckle up front, and a lot of that stemmed from missing or broken parts on the shaft guard. So I'm just trying to help save a life out there. If you do a lot of work on your equipment and you have the time to keep those PTO shaft bearings greased and everything, do it. But for those people out there who, aren't really too familiar with farming, I advise don't hook those chains up, because it's a lot less maintenance and it's much more safer in my opinion, because you don't have to mess around with the shaft guards. Like I said, it really doesn't need any maintenance if you just let them rotate. There's a lot less wear. So I just wanted to address that concern. A lot of people have been asking me, why are PTO shafts turn? Don't worry, they have shaft guards on them. You can grab them and they'll stop turning. I'm not saying that we do that, but you can. Every time you go to hook up a piece of equipment, if you don't have those chains installed, every time you go to run it, all you have to do is just walk back there, make sure that the shaft guard is free, and you won't have a problem. So, like I said, I just wanted to address that concern. I think that farm injuries are all too common, and that we really need to reduce those numbers, and PTO shaft guard accidents are just way too common yet. So stay away from these things. I think that should be our new slogan, just stay the heck away. If you see a running PTO shaft, just stay the heck away. Another actually benefit of not having those chains on there too is another guy that I read about. He said that he was running like a rototill or something like that, and it was PTO driven, and the slip clutch started slipping. Well, he couldn't hear the slip clutch slipping, so he got out. He thought he shut the PTO off, but he didn't. He had the chains on. He couldn't see the shaft spinning. And he got out there, he was beating on it, and finally it got loose and took his arm off right at the elbow. Actually, right below the elbow. So that's kind of one of those situations where visual cues are important. Thinking back to when Dad's brought me around the farm. He pointed at the PTO while it was running, and you say, if that is spinning, don't you ever get anywhere near that. And guess what? I thought until I was 12 years old that seeing that sucker spin, if it was spinning, that was a death trap. And it wasn't until I was like 12 that I learned that, okay, they actually spin on the shaft itself. But I had thought that for the longest time, and it has caused me to have a lot of respect for these things, to stay away from them when I can. I will not get out of the machine if this thing is running, especially the Serrano mower. I don't want to be anywhere, I don't want to be within 20 feet of this thing if it's running. So like I said, if you're ever going to get out and do some work on your equipment, make sure that it's shut off, and just be careful out there if it's a piece of equipment that you have to leave running. So I just wanted to address some of those concerns and tell you some of the stories that I've heard. Like I said, there's not a catch-all for everything. I do believe that chains are important in certain situations, but if you have a lot of equipment like we do, it's probably best just to let them be, and then they're lower maintenance and they're still just as safe. A lot of people don't think they are without those chains, but in reality, I've never heard of any situations of people dying with the shaft guards in proper working order. So, all right, just thought I'd cover that. It's a pretty important topic, and safety is something that everybody should know all about. So thanks for watching this video, guys. Be sure to check out all of our other ones. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat, all how farms work. And I'll see you next time.